Title: Evidence for the Resurrection of Jesus, a Comprehensive Apologetic Approach. Introduction. Welcome to this in-depth exploration of the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ, a cornerstone of the Christian faith. Whether you're new to this topic or looking to deepen your understanding, this presentation will guide you through historical, theological, and apologetic perspectives, demonstrating why the resurrection is not merely a matter of faith but is supported by compelling evidence. We will examine historical documents, explore the socio-political context of the Roman occupation, analyze gospel narratives, and address common objections through a robust apologetic approach. Part 1. The historical context of Jesus' life and death. To fully appreciate the evidence for Jesus' resurrection, it is crucial to understand the historical context of his life and death. Jesus lived in the 1st century Roman province of Judea, a land marked by political tension, religious fervor, and social upheaval. The Roman Empire maintained control through a network of governors, such as Pontius Pilate, and military presence, enforcing laws with harsh penalties, including crucifixion. Non-Christian sources, such as the Roman historian Tacitus and the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, provide independent attestations to Jesus' existence. Tacitus, in his Annals, circa AD 116, references Christus, who was executed during the reign of Tiberius by the procurator Pontius Pilate. Josephus, in his Antiquities of the Jews, circa AD 93, mentions Jesus as a wise teacher who performed surprising deeds and was crucified under Pilate. These sources corroborate key details of the gospel narratives and establish a historical foundation for examining the resurrection.
Part 2. The Crucifixion of Jesus. The crucifixion of Jesus is one of the most well-attested events in ancient history. Roman records, Jewish writings, and all 4 canonical Gospels agree on this pivotal moment. Roman crucifixion was a brutal method of execution reserved for rebels, slaves, and the most heinous criminals. Victims were scourged, humiliated, and nailed to a cross, where they would suffer a slow and agonizing death by asphyxiation. The Gospels provide detailed accounts of Jesus' crucifixion, noting specific historical details such as the involvement of Roman soldiers, the presence of Pontius Pilate, and the fulfillment of Jewish prophecy. Extra-biblical sources, including the Babylonian Talmud, also reference Jesus' death by crucifixion. The convergence of evidence from Christian, Jewish, and Roman sources solidifies the crucifixion as a historical event, forming a critical basis for the resurrection narrative.
Part 3. The empty tomb. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence for the resurrection is the empty tomb. According to the Gospels, Jesus was buried in a tomb owned by Joseph of Arimathea, a member of the Jewish Sanhedrin. This specific and verifiable detail would have made it easy to refute the resurrection claim by simply producing Jesus' body if it had remained in the tomb.
The role of women as the first witnesses to the empty tomb adds credibility to the account. In 1st century Jewish culture, women's testimonies were not highly regarded, making it unlikely for the Gospel writers to invent this detail if they were fabricating the story. Additionally, early Christian preaching centered on the resurrection in Jerusalem, the very place where Jesus had been publicly crucified and buried, further reinforcing the argument for the empty tomb. Part 4. Post-resurrection appearances. The resurrection accounts in the Gospels describe multiple post-resurrection appearances of Jesus to individuals and groups. These appearances were not fleeting visions but involved tangible interactions, such as Jesus inviting Thomas to touch his wounds and sharing meals with his disciples. The Apostle Paul, writing within decades of the resurrection, lists many witnesses, including over 500 people who saw the risen Jesus at one time. 1 Corinthians 15, 3-8. Addressing alternative theories, such as the hallucination hypothesis, highlights the strength of the resurrection argument. Hallucinations are typically individual and not collective experiences, making the numerous group sightings of Jesus unlikely to be mere psychological phenomena. The diversity of appearances, both in terms of settings and the people involved, further challenges naturalistic explanations and supports the claim of a genuine resurrection.
Part 5. The transformation of the apostles. The transformation of Jesus' disciples from fearful, hidden followers into bold preachers of the resurrection is a powerful testament to their conviction. After Jesus' crucifixion, the disciples were demoralized and afraid for their lives. However, after witnessing the resurrected Jesus, they became fearless evangelists, willing to suffer persecution and martyrdom for their message. Historical records and church tradition document the fates of the apostles, many of whom died for their faith. People do not willingly die for something they know to be a lie. The apostles' radical change and enduring commitment to the resurrection message suggest they truly believed Jesus rose from the dead.
Part 6. The growth of the early church. The early Christian movement's rapid growth in a hostile environment is another significant evidence of the resurrection. The apostles began preaching the resurrection in Jerusalem, where Jesus had been crucified. If the resurrection were a fabrication, it would have been easy for authorities or skeptics to disprove it by presenting Jesus' body or offering contradictory evidence.
Instead, the message of the resurrection gained momentum, leading to the conversion of thousands, including many Jews who would have been resistant to the idea of a crucified and risen Messiah. The bold proclamation of the resurrection, despite the risk of death, helped establish the early church and transform the Roman Empire. Part 7. The Gospel of Mark, long and short endings. One critical issue in Christian apologetics is the differing endings of the Gospel of Mark. The earliest manuscripts of Mark end at 16:8, with the women fleeing the empty tomb in fear. However, later manuscripts include a longer ending, Mark chapter 16 verses 9-20, detailing post-resurrection appearances and the Great Commission. Apologists address this issue by emphasizing that the resurrection narrative does not hinge solely on Mark's gospel. The other three gospels, as well as Paul's writings, provide consistent and corroborating accounts of the resurrection. The shorter ending of Mark does not deny the resurrection but leaves the story open-ended, possibly inviting readers to respond to the message themselves.
Summary. In conclusion, the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus is profound and multifaceted. Historical records, the empty tomb, eyewitness testimonies, the transformation of the apostles, and the growth of the early church all point to the reality of this event. The resurrection is not merely a religious claim but stands on solid historical and logical grounds, offering hope and assurance to those who seek the truth.
Call to action. If you found this presentation insightful, I encourage you to explore the evidence further. Consider reading the Gospels, engaging with Christian apologetic works, and asking questions. The resurrection of Jesus is not only a historical event but a transformative truth that offers life and hope to all who believe. Summary. Explore the compelling evidence for the resurrection of Jesus through historical records, apologetic arguments, and the transformational power of this pivotal event.